Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 15, Episode 99. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being back with us this Monday. Steelers Nation, 1 week away from the official start of the 2025 legal tampering period, but I'm sure a lot of technically illegal tampering took place over the weekend. Dave, NFL Combine wrapping up. Busy weekend for us, for the site, and for all you draft fanatics out there. Got some other quarterback news, because of course we do. Receiver news, and getting ready to hopefully finally figure out who this team's quarterback will be in 2025. Dave, how you doing?
All right. Happy Monday. Kind of a fun weekend tracking and learning more about these draftable players during the combine and all, and got to watch each of those episodes or sessions twice. Once along with you tracking, and then they immediately replay them after, so you get to learn a little bit more stuff that way there. And then now that that's over with here, and you got 1 week from today, the legal tampering period begins for the NFL, and needless to say, with all the business that did not get done during the combine, now we could have an interesting week here with the week leading up to not only the tampering period but a start of free agency as well. So expect the ball to get moving, especially when it comes to the Steelers in the quarterback position. I know they've said that the goal is to get one of those guys or get somebody locked up for the start of the new league year. I don't think there's any reason to think that won't happen. Who that is, we'll still have to wait and see. Everybody's bouncing on both sides of the whole Russell Wilson, Justin Fields thing here, but needless to say, we should start getting some movement in several areas, not only with the Steelers, but across the league here over the course of the next week.
Should be a bunch of rumors and buzz on the other side of the combine. It's already begun over the weekend, and we have some actual news. And so despite all the rumors and everything, there is the first quarterback domino to fall, not for Pittsburgh, but somebody that Pittsburgh was at least connected to and rumored about and speculated and spec-reported, all the fun stuff of the trimmings of the NFL news cycle. Matthew Stafford officially staying in Los Angeles, while I don't think an agreement has officially been put pen to paper yet. It's in principle, Stafford will remain with the Rams. Kudos to you, Dave. You called this one, 2 weeks ago, that they were not going to part. This was all buzz and scuttlebutt and not going to be reality of Stafford getting traded. So Pittsburgh will not have Matthew Stafford as their quarterback for 2025. And ultimately, it makes the most amount of sense for Stafford to remain with the Rams.
Yeah, it does. And that wasn't incredibly tough to kind of think that might end up that way. So I be careful giving me too much credit here, because
there were a lot of rumors. People were really convinced, myself included, that this thing was going to be a divorce.
I think at this point, look, it makes sense, right, for both sides to try to get this worked out for them, because as we kind of talked about, who was going to be what direction were they going to go in otherwise, even though there are potential options on the board, it makes sense to try to squeeze all the juice that you can out of Matthew. And I think Matthew Stafford's still got another, at least one decent season left in him at this point. I guess the biggest thing at this point, I don't think the details, as you said, perhaps the sign off on it hasn't actually happened on Matthew Stafford's side about what's going to happen contractually. I mean, they've agreed in principle, and we expect him to stay and all like that. It will be interesting, though, from a learning aspect, to see what they did with him. Did they bring money forward? Is there more new money involved? And all like that. But the key takeaway here, especially when it comes to the Steelers, is that's one fewer quarterbacks, direction that they could potentially go in.
And I think the biggest takeaway is that I think in some sense, the NFL and several teams were kind of waiting and on pause until Stafford's situation was known. And then you can pivot now. Pittsburgh and the rest of the NFL can look towards the other quarterback. And so I think this finality can kind of loosen the gears of the quarterback market and people really start putting into place once that top guy's off the board. It's okay. Now who's left? And we can start working on Russell Wilson and Aaron Rodgers, not just for Pittsburgh, but the entire NFL can kind of move forward now that the top guy, his situation is settled. So I think it still matters for Pittsburgh, even though ultimately there's no change in where Stafford will be playing next year.
Right. So we'll have to see. And once again, as we said, the combine time is when things are talked about, discussed, and a lot of the pre tampering what I'd like to call the illegal tampering period before the legal tampering period gets underway here. So once again, it'll be interesting to see some of the things that fall out now that Stafford has agreed to return or stay with the Rams, and then what that does, like you said, to the quarterback situation around the league now.
The pre-tampering
There you go.
period, which is what the combine is. Now, there was reporting that Pittsburgh realized pretty early on they were not going to be players for Matthew Stafford. The teams that were most seriously connected to Stafford, should he be traded, were the Las Vegas Raiders and the New York Giants. I think additional reporting came out that basically Stafford had little interest in Pittsburgh, in Cleveland, in even the Giants themselves. It probably came down to either staying with the Rams or going to Las Vegas. Some have taken that, and the reporting's not ironclad, but we'll assume it to be true, that Stafford is turning his nose up at Pittsburgh because he doesn't think he can win with the Steelers. And I think it's easy to argue that he has a better chance of winning with the Rams, with their infrastructure, with Sean McVay, than going to Pittsburgh. But I didn't know if that was really a slight towards the state of the Steelers. To me, it was more about he does not want to play in the cold out in Pittsburgh. That's why he didn't want to go to the Giants, didn't want to go to Cleveland. I think it was more environmental related, is my guess, more so than talent and roster and chances of winning based.
Yeah, and look, I mean, you'd rather stay with the devil that you know as well too. Both sides. I still think there's a good relationship there between McVay and I think his whole family is been rooted out there in L.A. for a while now. So you just try to find the best solution to make it work and stay where you're at. And yeah, he probably didn't want to have to uproot and go to the East Coast with what could have potentially been just one season, depending on how things worked out.
Right. So, again, I think certainly the Rams are in a better position to have success than Pittsburgh, but I don't know if that report was all about Pittsburgh's odds of winning. I think it was also about some of the external factors of moving across the country and playing in a cold weather environment for a guy that's either played in the dome, as he did in Detroit, or been in Los Angeles for the last several seasons. So Pittsburgh's search moves on. We'll hopefully get the final details on Stafford's contract. ESPN referred to it as a restructure. I don't know if that's just them being loose with the language or, as you said, maybe pushing some money forward. We'll have to wait and see, and you'll be all over the details once that gets announced.
Yeah, I'm looking for them, and I'll make well. If I don't write about it, at the very least, we'll discuss it. We'll discuss it on a future podcast here.
And let's discuss Deebo Samuel, another domino that fell, a little less weighty, but still somebody that could have been in the mix for Pittsburgh. Officially traded this weekend during the combine to the Washington Commanders for a 5th-round pick. On the surface, it seems like the Commanders gave up almost nothing for Deebo. But Dave, can you explain probably why there's more to this calculation of why trading for Deebo was probably a little less realistic in hindsight?
Here's the thing. They got, what did they get? A 5th-round pick on that overall, and with Deebo Samuel, there was the Washington Commanders took on the rest of his salary, and it looks like what was originally scheduled on the as far as salary goes for 2025. I think the base that Washington's going to acquire, there's $16.6 million. Deebo has, I think, a per game roster bonus bonuses that could total up to $750,000 and another $200,000 workout bonus. So I think his cap number is almost $17.5 million. That contract voids after the 2025 season as well too. So unless the 49ers were going to eat some of that say 17 and a half, nearly 17 and a half million, it was hard to envision the Steelers being in play in that. But obviously if the 49ers had agreed to eat some of that additional money, they probably would have wanted more than just a 5th round draft pick on top of it there. Washington obviously has the need, has the cap space, has the roster to kind of make a push to go around a rookie quarterback here moving forward here. Not a bad guy, especially if they're able to keep Terry McLaurin, which I expect them to do to move forward with here overall. So I think overall the 49ers did good to get a 5th round draft pick and have somebody take on the full remainder of the contract without them having to eat cash. Now they still, obviously the 49ers had dead money involved there, but this was a guy that their GM had talked about. Lynch had talked about, he asked for a change of scenery, and we're going to try to accommodate him. I understand fans of the Steelers being mad and the Steelers check out everybody, but they never pull the trigger, blah, blah, all the kind of talk that goes along with that. But I mean, this is a guy that's gotten a little bit older, even though I think he's still 29 or something like that at this point. But it does feel a little bit stiff, for an organization specifically like the Steelers that doesn't even know really who's going to be their quarterback right now, to go in for basically a 1-year, $17.5 million contract on Deebo Samuel, and give up a fifth round draft pick in the process. I mean, I think Deebo's a fine player, but if there had been more left on his contract to work with, maybe that would have been something. But I think that once again, I think the 49ers did a great job of getting him unloaded and finding a team to take on the full amount of his 2025 salary.
Agreed. Hard to do that when you basically announce to the world he's not playing for us next year. And so teams could have waited and lowballed and let the 49ers cut Deebo Samuel, but instead they were able to do something and get a lot of that salary, really the entire base salary, off the books. Now, again, there's advantages to trading for a guy. You guarantee that you get him, don't have to compete and all that kind of stuff. So, I had interest in Deebo Samuel. I think it's fair, as you said, to have a twinge of disappointment. He's not going to be in Pittsburgh, but ultimately Washington makes the most amount of sense for many of the reasons you outlined, for them having the NFL's most amount of cap space, having a quarterback on a rookie deal, having that situation all figured out. The connection between Commanders GM Adam Peters, who had worked in San Francisco as their front office executive previously before taking the Commanders job. So familiarity there to kind of take on maybe the quote unquote risk of Deebo being older, coming off a down year, questions about weight, more familiar with him than anybody else. And so, again, I get it. I would have liked Deebo, but to take on the entire contract on a 1-year, quasi rental, that 5th round pick is not the only element when you talk about the trade.
Yeah, look, good player, good yards after the catch guy. He should fit in nicely there with Washington overall. Did the Steelers pick up the phone or at least kind of inquire about that? I imagine they probably did some level of discussion. I mean, you go back to last year ahead of the draft and the Steelers being supposedly connected to really both 49ers receivers in Deebo Samuel and Brandon Aiyuk, and Ayuk's another one we'll talk about here in just a minute here. But I will say this. I mean, you got the start of the new league year right around the corner. I went back just to double check I had the right info on stuff, and I decided I'd go ahead and tweet it out while I was at it. The Steelers currently only have 5 wide receivers under contract for 2025. Those 5, or 3 of those are easy to remember: George Pickens, Calvin Austin III, Roman Wilson. The the other two, Brandon Johnson, Lance McCutcheon, for those playing at home on the board game version here. That's it. That's the 5 wide receivers that they have under contract here. And we know this team goes into training camp with how many, Alex? 10, 11, 9, 10, 11?
Sounds right.
Wide receivers under contract here, and here we sit right at, coming up on the start of the new league year, and they have 5. And if you're going to have to add some notable guys to this room, to this roster, either it be trade, free agency, draft, and then obviously, handful of undrafted free agents, or maybe a couple another futures guys here. So you just can't take just this 5 with you all off season here. So there will be a notable name or two that has played football in the NFL added to this list. I think you and I agree to that to this point. Deebo Samuel obviously won't be one of those. And I guess now that the domino has fallen with him, people are kind of wondering whether or not it'll be Brandon Aiyuk, and get back on the Brandon Aiyuk talk about train until something is done there.
Oh, Lord, let's go through that cycle all over again. I know it's become a little boy who cried wolf about. They're going to get a receiver, but let's just give this thing a couple days into the new league year before we start getting out pitchforks about the teams in action at wide receiver, which was a huge issue last year. Pittsburgh rightfully deserves all the criticism they received for not adequately replacing Deontay Johnson's role in production, but frustrating as it is to miss out on Deebo on another receiver traded to not Pittsburgh. Let's just give it some time here. There are plenty of options. I do think there's a lot of veteran opportunities for Pittsburgh to address, even though it's not going to be Deebo Samuel. So could it be Brandon Aiyuk? That has come up a little bit. I know NFL Network talked about it during the combine a little bit. John Lynch addressed it whenever he met with the media, essentially said that they're listening. I don't know. You can speak to it better than I can, Dave. Contractually, how they're going to make this thing work just off of him on the new deal they gave him last summer. The injury that he had, the ACL, it might have been an MCL issue as well. Will he be ready for week 1? And so, could they trade him? They drafted Pearsall last year. They re-signed Juwan Jennings, but I don't know. I'm just very skeptical of that.
I am too. I mean, they already dealt. What are you going to do with? I mean, look, everybody knows that they've got to get their quarterback situation signed to a mega deal this offseason, and they will. And there's obviously going to be other roster cuts and all like that they have to take care of here. But they've already dumped Deebo Samuel. Are you telling me they're going to turn around and drop Brandon Aiyuk, a guy that they just signed to a mega contract? Could they do that? I think they would have to do that prior to sometime in April here, when that option bonus or something comes due for Brandon Aiyuk. As of that would probably be the most ideal time, because once they sign up for that option bonus, they would have to kind of eat that in dead money there. So here's the thing with Aiyuk. I'm looking at his contract now. Once again, he's got a base salary of just $1.17 million in 2025. There is the option bonus that sites like Over the Cap already have prorated out because they expect them to pick it up. I believe that option bonus is nearly $23 million. And I think the exercise date on that is somewhere in April, because that's when the injury guarantees and all vest April 1st on him. So coming up here at, probably not right at the start of the new league year. And then, John Lynch talked about all these lines in the sand and how Aiyuk has this meeting with the team doctors to see where he's at in the timetable. And you're right. He tore his ACL and his MCL supposedly last season. And I think that happened sometime in October, right? So October, let's see, November, December, January, February, March. We're not even five full months since that injury happened. And you're talking about the Steelers potentially trading for a guy that you'd have to pay I don't know, what would it be? 24, $25 million in 2025 if you would acquire him. Could they make this all work from a cash perspective and then turn around and restructure the option bonus to spread it out to save cap money and all like that? Yes. The 49ers would still eat a pretty good chunk of dead money based alone on the signing bonus that they gave Deebo Samuel last year, and it would make for one hell of a expensive 1 year rental. But they could get out from underneath it. But on top of it, they probably want a pretty decent return as far as a draft pick to unload him injured and all, being as how that contract's already in place and all like that. It all I understand Lynch's side of the table here and saying, we're listening to everything and all like that. They should, but it's still, I still have this feeling now, especially now that Deebo Samuel's gone, that nothing's going to happen here. Especially, it'd be one thing, I think, if you had a guy that was, disgruntled but 100% healthy in Deebo Samuel, but it's so hard. I mean, in Brandon Aiyuk, but it's so hard to trade for a guy right now. Unless you have all the medicals to go along with it. And obviously, look, if any team is going to trade for Brandon Aiyuk, they're going to want to know where they're going to want to physical this guy and all like that, and talk to him and see where he's going on with the rehab here. But my heart of hearts at this point just thinks that this is all talk and nothing's going to come of it overall because of his injury, his rehab status, and the contract status.
I know Lynch talked about wanting to get younger, but Ayuk's only 27, so it's not like he's the old man
Right.
in the group. I'm just a layman for the cap, but I'm looking at over the cap and I'm looking at trades before June 1st, and the Niners will take a $7.6 million cap hit by trading him before June 1st. So how do you even contractually justify that if you trade him before June 1st?
Yeah, if you trade him before June 1st, looks like they would take like a eight. Well, I think specifically having to trade him before this option bonus is due is the way they have this number set up here. They would still take a $18.4 million bath in dead money and lose an additional $7.65 million in cap space based on what his cap charge is set to be now. So it doesn't make a lot of sense other than if the player's just disgruntled. You kind of worry about his future, maybe coming off of the knee injury and all like that. It doesn't add up in several areas, and not saying that it won't happen. They won't ultimately deal him, but it just doesn't add up, especially on the heels of trading away Deebo Samuel.
I might be in the wrong here, and I don't want to dwell on this too much, but does a post June 1st trade make sense? I know there's the option bonus and it's massive, but they don't need like a receiver this year. They don't need the draft picks this year the way they needed it last year when they entertained trading Ayuk because they have Pearsall, they have Jennings. And so could they find a receiver needy team after the draft, after the first two waves of free agency that needs a receiver and more willing to trade for Ayuk, and the Niners can collect some future picks?
The short answer is always could they? Yes. Now in today's NFL, we've seen teams around the NFL just take massive cap hits, right? So,
and they'll get salary cap savings post June 1st of 6.1 according to Over the Cap.
Right, but they still you defer. What you're doing is you're deferring that the rest of the cap hit to the dead money to 2026.
Sure. But with the cap rising each year by 20, 30 million, that'll become a smaller percentage and more manageable.
Yeah, but on the flip side, you'd much rather have the draft picks now, probably, right?
Well, but if it's going to hurt your cap space now as you're trying to get Purdy to a long-term deal and get through other parts of free agency and for the 2025 season, I could see the allure of doing that post June 1st because it's not like they need the draft picks or they need to get receivers back the way that they needed to do that last year.
Well, here's the thing. If they keep him and they go ahead and exercise that option bonus, then his cap number is Deebo's cap number is just going to be 10.7 million.
Aiyuk, you said.
Yeah, I mean Aiyuk. Sorry, we're talking. I always get these two jumbled up. Ayuk's cap number, if they exercise his option bonus, would be I think 10.7, almost 10.75 million.
And would that make it harder to trade? I'm just trying to follow the point on that.
Well, I mean, you're already giving him that option bonus on top of everything else. So you spent cash that you're not going to recoup. So the most ideal time to trade him away would be before having to pay this upcoming option bonus. See, Over the Cap's already got it prorated out. They're assuming that they're going to pay him this option bonus, and they've got it prorated out. That's why you see in the option bonus proration column there 4.571 million, and then the rest of the way, because they're already prorating this thing out as if they're going to give him this option bonus. And then and the reason it raises again in 2026 is I believe he's got another option bonus in next offseason as well too. So they're they're going ahead and projecting this out as if both these option bonuses are being picked up.
Okay. So option bonuses are prorated out the way that signing bonuses are.
Yeah, you give them it's almost like a signing bonus, and they have a mature date, almost like a roster bonus per se.
Gotcha. Okay. So we'll see. I guess it's worth mentioning. I know it was such a headache last year, and listen, I'm the first to sit here and say I do not want to go down this road again. Hopefully, it certainly makes a whole lot less sense to trade for Aiyuk this year than last year. And we were both encouraging and proponents of trading for Aiyuk last year, but it is a different set of circumstances this year with the injury and with the other options that Pittsburgh will have.
And look, if any team, if they were to, and including the Steelers, if they were to trade for Aiyuk, you're not going to have this guy during OTAs,
right. And you might,
and you might not have him for the start of training camp either, because he could be on active PUP. As well too. So do you want to invest all this money in draft capital and play the waiting game for him, and not, even though ACL and MCL reconstruction and these guys come back from it all the time, but there's still some question of whether or not this is going to be the same player or not.
Sure.
And how tentative will he be? These guys are usually tentative coming off of ACL, MCL, at least initially. How much time are you going to miss, with him, getting him right again in his first season with whatever team? So it makes it incredibly difficult to kind of deal this type of player just 1 year into a contract. Especially when you got these option bonuses and all involved and guaranteed money.
Fair, and he would miss crucial development time, as you said, in OTAs and training camp to get up to speed in your offense with your quarterback, and he's going to come into the season pretty cold, and so you never know how that's going to work out. So, going to mention it because Lynch has commented on it. He's not shut that door. It's hard to see Pittsburgh wanting to open it again.
Right. Now, another wide receiver that there was, I guess, some quote unquote news about on Sunday that we've talked about quite a bit. Davante Adams and Ian Rappaport came out and said the Jets are still trying to trade Davante Adams. Well, good luck with that. Good luck with finding a team to take on well over $30 million in salary. And we said this right after Davante went to the Jets last year, that this is just going to be a rental situation with him. Long story short, I mean, I don't expect the Jets to be able to trade Davante Adams. I mean, why? They can just cut him outright and not have to owe him any money, as opposed to getting a team that says, okay, give us we'll give you a 6th-round draft pick, but you have to eat a good portion of that. No team's going to take on a chunk of salary with Davante Adams, and the Jets aren't going to eat any cash as part of this. So this is just a polite, hey, does anybody want to trade for him kind of situation here, knowing damn good and well that nobody's going to trade for him. So I expect before too long we're going to see an official transaction with Davante Adams cut, and then at that point he'll obviously be a street free agent and able to come to terms with whatever team he wants to at that point. And I do expect at that point the Steelers to be in the mix.
I agree. I think Adams is a guy certainly worth having interest in. I suppose, is there a way that a trade could happen where the new team would be working out a restructured, reworked contract as part of a trade with Davante Adams? Is that plausible?
I mean, that long story short, Adams would have to agree
Sure.
to come off some money.
Yeah. I mean, he can't play at his current base salary. It's what, 35 million. That's not going to
Right.
happen anywhere. Becomes a free agent, not going to get even close to that. But I guess that could be part of a trade term where they're going to give him a 6th-round pick. Adams reworks his contract, takes a pay cut, whatever the case is, to go to his new team. But again, that seems, as you said, this is kind of like, it doesn't hurt to throw it out there and just see, but he's going to get cut.
If Davante Adams is traded by the Jets, it's because some team was able to talk to him beforehand, given permission by the Jets to work out a lower 2025 salary. And if a team wants him past 2025, they're going to have to get him to rework 2026 too, because he's got the same structure as far as salary goes for 2026. So if teams are going to look at him as a 1-year rental for 2025, then you've got to severely, I mean, you've got to cut that number really almost in half, it feels like.
I do wonder what his market value is. Is it half? It feels like it's not going to be quite that dramatic in a receiver market that's hot. I don't know, maybe in the 20s, I think, 22. I don't know, just making up numbers. Kind of sounds like the right number for him.
I mean, look, he's going to want at least half of that 35.6 number, I would think. As a bottom floor, he probably feels he's worth at least that for one season.
We're doing an old Eddie Murphy's 80s show here.
Want half
Eddie. Yeah, so we'll see. I think he'll get caught. That's that's been the expectation since basically the new regime took over, that Rodgers was not coming back, and ergo Adams was not going to return. They were going to clean house overall. I think Pittsburgh will be in the mix. They should be in the mix. Adams can still play, even though he's in his 30s. Strong hands, good release, good route runner, exactly what Pittsburgh needs. Been there, done that kind of a guy. Won't be cheap for sure, but won't be as expensive on his current contract. So all those other receiver options are still out there.
Yeah, and I know there's a lot of people still hoping for maybe a Godwin with the Buccaneers, but didn't the Buccaneers push back his
Date.
his void date and all like that? And you do that with the with the feeling that you're going to both sides to work out something. We'll obviously see if that ends up happening here fairly soon, though. But my gut tells me that Chris Godwin's going to remain, and he's another one that's coming off of an injury as well, too, right?
A fractured ankle.
Right. So I mean, and then there's more kind of rumblings about, I guess, DK Metcalf. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But if they're indeed going to remain with Geno Smith, it feels like you're going to want to keep at least some of that core wide receiver group together with him, even though they might move on, obviously, from their other wide receiver that we talked about, who's
Tyler Lockett's gonna be gone.
Yeah,
so
Tyler Lockett likely to be gone, but and there's just not enough there right now for me to think that DK Metcalf's going to be gone.
Same. There's been some, again, this is all rumor, speculation, lying season, separating fact from fiction is really the goal, and it's hard to do. But Cortland Sutton, that's been mentioned a time or two, again, for Pittsburgh. I think there was some interest last year. The Niners tried to coordinate that wild 3-team trade where Sutton would go to the Niners, Aiyuk to Pittsburgh, 3rd rounder going to Denver. I still don't see the incentive right now for the Broncos to trade Cortland Sutton, coming off their great season, or progressing season for Denver, and Sutton seems pretty happy there. But another name at least worth mentioning again.
Right. And people are saying, well, damn, you guys are sitting here punching holes in all these. And we talked about T. Higgins and expected to get him to get the franchise tag. You talk about Chris Godwin thinking he's going to stay. You think nothing's going to happen with Brandon Aiyuk here? Where does that leave the Steelers? Well, we've talked about Amari Cooper potentially being an option for this team. Davante Adams. Who else is I think Darius Slayton is a guy that we've kind of talked a little bit about in the past. Who else is on this list that could potentially that's going to indeed hit free agency, or at least we think that the Steelers could be interested in?
Let me pull up a list of free agent. Not that he's going to be one of those in the bucket you're talking about, but Christian Kirk from Jacksonville, could he be cut? I know the new regime said that they're looking to keep him, but who knows? A lot of, coach and GM speak right now. I think Lockett could also be potential for Pittsburgh, assuming that he is released. Let me just pull up the other list of receivers. Again, it's just about finding that one name. You can dislike half the list, but there's one or two names that you like. That's all that really matters. And there's certainly some names out there. Now, I'm not a fan of Stephon Diggs. I would not go after Stephon Diggs, but he'll be a free agent. DeAndre Hopkins, Hollywood Brown, Slayton, as you said, Keenan Allen's a name worth mentioning coming off his season in Chicago. Those are kind of the names with the ones we mentioned that are going to be cut and potentially traded. Cooper Kupp, should mention Cooper Kupp as
Cooper
well.
Kupp, right.
He's going to get dealt. Does not seem like there's a path for him to return to Los Angeles. I'm not crazy about the idea, but certainly wouldn't be shocking if he landed in Pittsburgh.
All right. What other kind of rumblings and news, quarterback maybe related?
Just throw some more quarterback names at you, Dave. Derek Carr. Ian Rappaport floating Derek Carr as not in like heavy connection with Pittsburgh, but just kind of musing on NFL Network late in the combine as the offensive linemen were going through their drills that his situation in New Orleans seems to be a bit unsettled, although earlier in the week, GM of the Saints, Mickey Loomis, said that they are happy with Carr. They want to keep Carr. That's the guy that they believe they can win with for new head coach Kellen Moore. And so I don't really see little Stafford doesn't make sense for those two sides to part right now. There is no internal backup plan behind Carr with Spencer Rattler and I don't know, Jake Hayner. It just doesn't make sense there. Then have to go explore outside options and probably pay for that. Why not just pay and stick with Carr? So we'll see. The Saints seem like they want to keep Carr. Rappaport mentioned that, and so it's worth us mentioning that.
Yeah, we'll find out how much of a lying game maybe Mickey Loomis was playing with the Saints there. But my takeaway, based on kind of the tone and and contextualizing it all out, it feels like sticking. Now they might get into the draft and try to draft one or whatnot on top of it here, but at its core, it feels like Derek Carr is going to play at least one more season with New Orleans.
Agreed. So we'll just get some finality on that. I know they're in a really bad cap space situation, the Saints, as they always are. So that is maybe some incentive to try to do something to move Carr off the books. But you want to have your quarterback there for your first time new head coach, and just makes sense for him to stay.
All right, then obviously Justin Fields and Russell Wilson, the speculation on both sides of the fence continues on both those guys.
Correct. Now, indications have still pointed towards Fields being the front runner, the leader in the clubhouse, in pole position, whatever fancy phrase you want to use, but nothing's done until it's done. And we're still really no closer to knowing and with any sort of confidence that Wilson will return or Fields will return or however this quarterback situation will work out. And reporting also indicates the door is not closed on Russell Wilson. Now, some people think he's going to go somewhere else. There was one league source, I think it told Connor Hughes, who covers the Jets and Giants, that they believe that Wilson will end up with the New York Giants. So that's some of the combine buzz there. That has certainly picked up. Fields seems like he'll have a market. If not Pittsburgh, the Raiders could have interest. The Jets could have interest. Even the Colts could have interest, although I find that one less likely than the other two. My takeaway from this, Dave, and it's, who the heck knows, but Fields is not going to get paid no 1 year, $6 million contract that some, national sites have projected him to receive. If he's going to have that kind of a market, teams competing for his services as a, likely potential starter, that price tag is far, far higher. That's kind of my one takeaway I can say with a level of confidence.
Yeah, and especially when you look back at what a guy like Mitch Trubisky got from the Steelers a couple of years back, right, and all like that.
Gardner Minshew last year.
Yeah, it feels like it's going to be much, much higher than that. Look, I understand the sentiment overall from Steeler fans, really, really frustrated at this point, saying, "Man, if they and it depends on the." It feels like the majority of Steeler fans want this team to roll forward with Justin Fields, and that's understandable. There is a selection that thinks, okay, well let's roll it back with Russell Wilson. The main overall frustration is why don't the Steelers have at least one of these guys back under contract at this point? And I understand that frustration. Look, I mean, here we are a week away from the legal tampering season beginning, which means another another couple of days added on top of that to the start of the new league year, and you still don't know who this team's quarterback is going to be. I understand the frustration with that, but on top of it, you got to remember that the combine is usually that key time of year where teams do a lot of talking and all. They figure out, what teams might be interested, where, how certain dominoes are going to fall, especially at a key position, at the quarterback position, and that's what that time in Indianapolis is used on, in addition to obviously looking at the draft prospects and all like that. So now that the combine's over with, now that we know where Matthew Stafford's going to stay with Los Angeles. Now, this week leading up to the start of the new league year, this is when you would generally expect some of these things to start happening. So once again, people have been on both sides. Even beat writers at this point that cover the Steelers are so mixed up with what they've said in the past as far as their predictions go. And now you're seeing some of them even double back and saying, "Well, I could, at my heart of hearts, I could see maybe both of these guys potentially returning. The chances of that, nobody knows which way this thing is going to go at this point." Still now, logic would probably tell you, and probably most of the rumblings will probably tell you that it end up being Justin Fields. But the fact of the matter is, you've got a lot of people. Nobody's come out definitively said Justin Fields is definitely returning to Pittsburgh. Russell Wilson's definitely returning. All I have to say really to people listening to this and fans is, just kind of be patient with this now that the combine is ended with. I expect we're going to see some movement soon before legal tampering period starts, at least the Steelers getting one of these guys under contract.
It is agonizing. It is unsettling to not know who your quarterback is 1 week before, really free agency kicks off, which is what the legal tampering period is. It's just free agency that isn't technically free agency, but the deals are done over that 48-hour span before, or 56-hour span before the new league year officially kicks off. So I get all that, but my prediction, and it's a really safe, it's not me going out on a limb, but I made it several weeks ago, was that a deal with a quarterback would get done post-combine, but before the tampering period kicks off on Monday, March 10th. I still believe that. Who's it going to be? Still leaning Fields, still thinking Fields. Not going to change my position from where I was about 8 seconds after the 2024 season ended in that wild card loss to Baltimore. But no one knows for sure. And that's the one thing we can say for sure, is that no one knows for sure.
Right. And look, Gomor Khan mentioned this during the combine. It makes a difference of kind of the wide receivers that maybe they want to sign. And if you're a guy like Davante Adams and you end up getting cut, don't you want to know who the Steelers quarterback's going to be before you sign?
Sure, it would be nice. I wish somebody would have pressed on Khan on that a little bit. But I wonder, okay, so if it's a Russ return, the receiver they want, I assume, is that outside vertical moonball catching receiver. What kind of receiver does it look like if they bring back Justin Fields?
Yeah, might it be a guy that you kind of a more compressed passing game? A guy that can maybe get open, a guy that yeah, it would have been nice to hear him press a little bit more on that.
Because
but it's not like the options were going to grow, though.
Right. I wonder, materially, does it really change the calculation too much? If there's a receiver they like, they're going to like him regardless of the quarterback. There may be some difference on the margin, maybe of a draft profile type. Yeah, maybe for Fields, you want a better route runner, somebody who gets open to maybe aid Fields on yak throws, accuracy, that kind of stuff. I just a little curious there, but regardless, you need a quarterback to bring in basically any free agent, because they're going to want to know who's their quarterback before they sign somewhere. So there's urgency for Pittsburgh to get it done. But of course, they don't hold all the cards here. They're not using the franchise tag. And so they only have so much leverage here on Fields and Wilson, who are unrestricted free agents. And if they want to test the market or just simply don't want to return, they don't have to. And Pittsburgh has no recourse. So there's no guarantee, but we'll wait and see. Again, I still think something will get done before the tampering period kicks off, which I think is going to be noon. Is it noon or 4 on Monday? I know we had this discussion.
I thought it was noon, wasn't it?
I think
I don't remember.
I believe you're right. Yeah, I believe right. Noon on Monday, March 10th.
Right. And here's something else to think about that we've talked about. Look, this team would be wise to add a couple of veteran guys to that room, and not guys like Van Jefferson and Scotty Miller, guys that more than minimum type guys. And it will be interesting to see if any of these guys that they do bring in, specifically at the wide receiver position, end up with those APYs greater than, say a Cam Hayward and all. They would be wise to add a couple of them regardless, because hopefully they learn their lesson that and look, Roman Wilson might turn out to be a fine wide receiver in the NFL, but the fact of the matter is you still don't know much more about him than you did the day after you drafted him, except for a handful of practices and some playing time in what was it, one game there overall. So they would be, and look, they potentially still could draft a wide receiver, and I think they should draft a wide receiver overall, but they would be wise to have a couple of veterans come in that door via free agency.
Sure,
or
I get
trade
that.
or trade.
Yeah. And maybe we'll all be a little extra. Maybe it'll be easier to sign somebody. We'll all be a little tired on that Monday day. That's the day after daylight savings time, where we move the clocks forward an hour. We lose an hour, I believe, is how that works. So be a little tired, tuckered out Monday podcast coming up for all of us.
And here's the thing, as we mentioned, if one of Russell Wilson or Justin Fields is brought back, they're going to earn more with the Steelers than they earned last year. And if you in a situation with Justin Fields, how many times have you seen a guy that was not your starter, or was your starter due to quote unquote injury, couldn't keep the job, regardless of how good or how successful it was in the win-loss column there, and then turn around with that guy and then pay him 3-4 times what he earned the season before.
I'm sure it's rare, but all that matters. All that matters is the here and now. What is the best option for the Steelers? History be damned. Like, all that matters is who's the best guy for the moment, and I still think that's Fields. We'll see, but I also think it's going to be more expensive than some of the low ball projections that have come in. It's going to be, I think, at least a 2-year deal if he re-signs with Pittsburgh. They don't want to do the whole 1-year thing and have that uncertainty of not having a quarterback really identified, at least in name, for 2026. So 2 years. I've said in that $15 to $20 million range. I think it's going to take close to maybe 20 million. So I think 2 years, 40 million, something like that's what you're going to see. Yeah,
they're going to have to dump regardless. And we talked about this when it comes to cash spending and the cap space and all that this team has. Whoever this ends up being, they're going to spend some cash on in 2025 on a quarterback.
And they have the cash and the cap to do so. So what is your sense of the market value on both guys? I know it's tough to identify with Fields and Wilson.
20 million over 20 million on both those guys. That has been my thought for a while now.
So if you had to just lay out a contract projection in the ether for any team, not even assume Pittsburgh, but Fields, I said 2 years, 40 million. If you had to do your best projection, what would it look like?
I mean, there's nothing wrong with what you just said there. 2 for 40.
What about with Russ?
Man, it still feels like this guy thinks that he can help a team and can at least get, what's that next tier, 30, 35? You look at the Baker, probably not as maybe rich as a Baker Mayfield, because he's obviously, having some success there. Let me pull up the quarterback market real quick again.
I think Geno Smith was the lowest paid non-rookie full-time quarterback, mouthful as that is. I think he was at 25 million last year.
Yeah, and are they trying to do something with him? So I mean, Baker's at 30, probably somewhere in that gap from that 25 to that 33.3 number that Baker Mayfield has.
How many years?
I mean, you could do it for 3, but it doesn't mean that, I think you try to keep the guaranteed money to just 2025.
So if you did 3, that was my thought. I think he wants 3 years, basically puts him through his age 40 season, 3 years, 90 million. Is that what you're thinking? It's not crazy. It sounds crazy, but it's not crazy.
No. I don't think it is crazy. I mean, look, Russell Wilson, obviously those last several games wasn't great there, but he still showed that he can win ball games and can still throw the deep ball. And that'll get somebody through the bridge to a young quarterback,
I'll give my official Alex Kozora meaningless contract projection for Russell Wilson, regardless where he signs. 3 years, $75 million, $25 million per year.
All right, so equal to Geno Smith then.
Yeah, pretty similar. It just his value took a big hit with that 5-game losing streak. Had that end of the season, even if there had been a wild card loss, but if Pittsburgh just didn't have that terrible losing streak and kind of the stink of that, the stench of that on him, he would have been getting at or above Baker levels. But it's just hard to pay that guy knowing he's not going to be long term, not going to be your future. You're going to be looking for rookie quarterback help, but still quarterbacks get paid. Still going to likely start in 2025 with the lack of other veteran quarterback options, with the poor draft class, drives market prices up. Now, if Sam Darnold becomes a free agent, should mention Darnold, by the way, in ESPN's article on Sunday, they did not discount the possibility of Darnold coming to Pittsburgh. I have a hard time seeing that, but we'll mention that as well. If Darnold becomes a free agent, that may tamp down the value of Wilson a little bit because some team will go out there and pay Darnold a lot more money to have him as their starting quarterback.
All right. The Bengals just released guard Alex Kappa.
Yeah, he came over from Tampa Bay. Guess he wasn't that great. They need some guard help for sure. Left guard and now at right guard, they've been pretty weak. The Bengals offensive line in general has not been good for several seasons, but certainly could use some interior help. I imagine they'll be tracking that and had eyes on the offensive line of the combine yesterday pretty closely.
All right. Well, we'll see how the quarterback situation shakes out here this next week. I'll be glad to get this behind us, and my hope, are we going to be talking about this position again next offseason with the uncertainty?
We're going to talk about it every year until they find that long-term option. Even if they have a quarterback under contract next year, the discussion would be, let's just say for sake of conversation, it's Justin Fields. He has an okay season. The question will be, okay, do you go with Justin Fields for 2026? Do you look at a rookie quarterback? This discussion is not going to stop until they find the next future franchise quarterback.
Agreed. All right.
All right, Dave, let's talk NFL Combine. We had a lot of fun watching a lot of men run around in tight clothing this weekend. We talked about on Friday the everything's jumbling together. Who worked out on that and that first day?
We talked about defensive line, edge, and linebackers, didn't we?
Yeah, the front seven worked out, so we won't go through that again, but the other position groups worked out. Your impressions, I guess we should maybe piecemeal together. Let's go kind of position group by position group of the ones we have not discuss. Let's go with the quarterbacks. They worked out. The DBs worked out on the following day. Dave, I think it's a decent cornerback class. A lot of guys obviously not working out overall. Your impressions of the corners or the DBs as a whole?
I mean, when it comes to what the Steelers generally look for, there are a couple of guys obviously on this year's list that can help. I think we talked about the interview that Jedi Barron out of Texas gave, and he measured in. I think he did okay helping himself without a doubt. Ran a 4.39 40. Had nice jumps and all like that. I mean, I think he checks a lot of boxes, especially with how he can move around in secondaries as far as what you would need. As we mentioned, kind of wondered about Thomas out of Florida State. Ended up not doing anything other than I think a vertical jump. So we'll have to wait till pro day when it comes to him. Several interesting guys here when it comes to the Steelers. Some worked out, some didn't. Benjamin Morrison out of Notre Dame, Darian Porter out of Ohio State. Obviously, Will Johnson should go very high in this draft out of Michigan. Maxwell Hairston had a hell of a damn combine there. Ran a 4.28 official 40-yard dash. Had fantastic jumps, 39.5 vertical, 10.9 broad jump. Guy that I have not touched his film on, but am interested in doing so. Trey Amos out of Ole Miss is another guy that I'm interested to look at the tape that I have not cracked open as well too. So there are various shapes and sizes when it comes to this class. The Steelers like these guys to be longer beam is another one I have not watched. Shrine was at the Shrine. Low underweight at 175, but ran good. I think I was looking at some stuff on him. Isn't he a guy that excelled pretty decent in man coverage overall at Rutgers? Is a guy that I want to look at as well too. So I mean, look, overall, this is a nice list. We do expect the Steelers to potentially fill in some gaps, maybe in free agency. I'm not necessarily convinced, based on meetings and all, that this will be a position that's drafted in the first 2 rounds, maybe. But I could see them addressing this position, especially if they got a versatile guy, someone that can play in the slot, in the nickel, or in sub package quite a bit, can kind of help you. I do expect them to address this position. Not a great class overall, but definitely not as weak as some position groups in this draft.
Sure. Well said. I thought across the board, the corners ran well. Very few guys had poor workouts, and the big winner of the cornerback group, and arguably the entire combine, Davis, the name you mentioned, Maxwell Hairston from Kentucky. I did the report on him a couple weeks ago. I'm high on his game. I gave him a second-round grade at the time for this great workout. Could he work himself into that back end of the first-round conversation? Certainly not out of the question with that kind of speed, athletic ability, fluid, easy mover, change of direction. He's aggressive. He has great zone eyes, fantastic ball skills. He's a hitter. If you watch a 2024 tape, the tackling isn't as good. He battled a shoulder injury, only played 7 games because of it. But if you look at his overall tape, 2023 when he was healthy, aggressive, physical, not the biggest guy, going to get beat up a little bit, but alpha mentality, confident, has added weight. He was like a buck 60 in high school, a buck 83 at the combine today at 5'11". The height's good, a little bit smaller, but at least 31-inch arms for 5'11", buck 83 is good overall profile. Not going to get too caught up in the size. I think he'd be a fantastic zone corner in the NFL, would fit Pittsburgh well, but it seems like to get him, going to have to take a pretty high draft pick to grab him.
What do you know about Jacob Parrish out of Kansas State? 5'9", 3/4, 191. Put together pretty good, and had a good combine as well.
Yeah, I didn't do the report on him, so I really haven't watched him. A good workout. We have the report up. I can read the conclusion once I get the article pulled up. That's from our Jim Hester that did it just a few days ago. Just kind of read the overall takeaways. Gave him a second-round grade. Compared him to Andrew Phillips last year from Kentucky, although Parrish has not worked out of the slot as often. Says struggles the most in off-man coverage, thinks he can play outside corner, but best position would be at the slot because of his size, play style, and play recognition. So zone corner, instinctual. What was his production last year? Let's just look at that quickly. 50 tackles, 1 interception, 8 pass breakups. A couple too many penalties, 7 penalties last year. So one thing to look at with that.
Everybody will continue talking about Siobhan Ravel Jr. out of Eastern Carolina, coming off of that injury and all like that. Is he going to be able to do anything? I don't think so. What's he going to be able to do at his pro day? Do you know?
His agent had sent a note out to teams from a doctor that basically said, I think he'll be cleared for later this year, but I don't believe the indication was he'll do anything at his pro days, which pro days, Dave, are about to start here in a couple of days. The way they kind of schedule it is we love it, but it's like produce pro days in 2 days, I think, which is kind of crazy. So yeah, Ravel with that ACL tear that happened last fall, don't think he's going to be able to work out at all in this pre-draft process.
All right, moving on to
let me give you just 2 other names here. You mentioned it earlier, but I thought Darian Porter from Iowa State, a guy I really had an eye on. A lot of the guys I wanted to see didn't work out fully or at all at Indy, but Porter was one. We knew he would run well. He ran fantastic. A 4.3 40 at 6'3", nearly 200 pounds. I wanted to see change of direction. I thought he looked more fluid in his turn in some of those on-field drills. You look at the 3-cone, the shuttle drills, 6'7", 3-cone, 4.04 short shuttle, elite times for a guy of that size. There's lack of experience, 1-year starter, and that was kind of even a half year in 2024. Former receiver making the transition to cornerback. He is high cut, but I thought there was more fluidity than I thought there might be for a tall, long kind of a guy like him. The 3-cone, the short shuttle are really encouraging. So that's a guy that is that avatar type of corner that Pittsburgh gravitates towards. And then I'll mention one other name as well, talking more slot. Upton Stout, Western Kentucky. I wanted to see what his 40 time was. I thought on tape he was a 4.5 kind of a guy. He ran 4.44 official, had good jumps. He's not big, but he plays big. Hearts and smarts kind of guy. Physical, active against the run. again, kind of that chip on the shoulder mentality, good communicator, moved all around that Hilltoppers front. Michigan recruited him. USC recruited him for 2024. He stayed at Western Kentucky. I have some concerns about the upside on this game, just some of the size limitations, but that's a guy that I think could be a quality NFL nickel.
All right, good dart throw there. All right, safety class overall here, not all that impressive, but boy, there was one guy that in an unimpressive class. There was one guy that stuck out that makes. I mean, there's him, and then there's everybody else, and that's that Nick Amorwari out of South Carolina. This guy put up numbers that just unreal, right?
Yeah, Eamon Worry had a fantastic workout, one of the best really in combine history. That sounds hyperbolic, but it's not if you're into relative athletic score. I know we both are. I think did he officially hit 10 on RAS?
I thought he did. Now he obviously hasn't done. I don't think the 20-yard shuttle or the 3-cone probably do that at the pro day, but based on the things that he did do, he for a guy 220, 6'3", 118, that guy is an athletic specimen, and several people saying, man, that he's definitely going to be a first round material now for some team.
Looks like it, yeah. 4.38 40, 43-inch vertical, 11.6 broad at 6'3", 220 pounds, just a freaky type of a guy. I know our report worried about him out in space and wondered, does the testing match the tape, and is he a little more raw, and is he more of a box type of guy? But to bet on traits, to bet on athleticism, to be the top safety in this class, he'll be the first guy off the board and likely hearing his name on Thursday night.
Wasn't he the one that people were talking about, wondering if maybe he'd make the move to linebacker or something off the ball or whatnot?
Yeah, there's kind of that hybrid feel at his size. He's rocked up 220 pounds, so he's a big safety at 6'3". That's kind of almost in this modern age linebacker like. But I think with his athleticism, people would want to keep him at least at strong safety.
All right. Let's see. Malachi Starks. What do you think about his performance? He's an underclassman. Malik Burton out of Iowa State was another one, underclassman. And then Kevin Winston Jr. Didn't do anything, much of anything at the combine out of Penn State.
He's coming off of injury, and so no surprise. I should take it back. Starks really probably going to be the first safety drafted, and then maybe Eamon Worry behind. Starks also had a good workout, not as gaudy, but ran a 4.5, which is solid and has the good tape. Thought he was smooth and did well in drills, was able to show explosiveness out of his turn. And so that's important. That really translated well. Thought Craig Woodson from Cal, guy that I have talked up quite a bit, day 3 guy, wondered what he would run. To run 4.45 is fantastic for him. He jumped well. No surprise there. Billy Bowman had a nice workout. Don't know a whole lot about him. Undersized. We have a report up on him on the site. Ran 4.42, 35.5-inch vertical, 17 reps on the bench press. I thought Jonas
Sanker.
Yeah, Jonas Sanker's a guy I haven't dug into too much yet. Thought he had a good, solid workout overall. Seems like Virginia's always pumping out good safeties. One, Thornhill, they had a kid last year whose name escapes me. There's always some of those Cavalier safeties that are coming out. That's the guy I want to learn about a lot more.
All right, the Steelers could have some interest in a later round safety, definitely in this draft. What did you think about the tight end group overall?
Disappointing in the way that they ran for sure. There's high expectations on this group. Now, some of the top guys didn't work out. We got Loveland on that shoulder injury, and so he's not going to be ready probably until, I think, training camp, it sounds like, on him. Tyler Warren didn't work out. The other guys probably underwhelmed. I know what the biggest disappointment in the moment was Gunnar Helm from Texas, who was one of the best receiving tight ends in football last year, led the Longhorns in receptions even more than Matthew Golden and Isaiah Bond. He ran 4.84, only 30 inches in the vertical, but come to find out, I think the day after, that he had posted a photo. Yeah, he had twisted his ankle on his first 40 attempt. He had a false start and then gutted it out. And so that may be the reason why his times came in pretty lackluster. So the tight end group, not super impressive in how they tested, but I still think the overall strength of the class, you look at the tape, it's a strong, deep group of guys.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see. I'm not expecting the Steelers to address this position unless they get a steal at the top or something like that. I mean, Tyler Warren, I'm a huge Tyler Warren fan there, but I think the takeaway is that he'll even potentially be off the board at 21, and that, nothing at the combine changed that feeling.
Again, other guys that were intriguing that probably would have tested well did not work out. Elijah Arroyo from the U, Gadsden from Syracuse, who I've watched a good amount of Syracuse tape, watching guys like LaQuint Allen. Gadsden has popped for me. Mason Taylor, son of Hall of Famer Jason Taylor, did not run or anything like that. And I think one guy who did test, who I mentioned before, Jalen Conyers, who ran a good time for his frame at 4.74. His shuttle times were off the charts: 4.27 short shuttle, 6.94 three cone, leading that group. Just a unique body type. If you get a creative, innovative offensive coordinator, can do some fun things with Jalen Conyers.
All right, running back class as advertised, especially when it comes to running. Boy, what a large group of running backs this year, and talk about how deep and how good a class this is overall. And boy, did they did not disappoint as a group, especially when it came to the 40s and all.
Yeah, this is a fast group of running backs, David. I think they said the fastest group of running backs in, what they say, maybe 20 years or something like that. It's a really, really strong group, and a lot of guys helped themselves, ran really impressive times. Marion Hampton from North Carolina, I was a little uncertain about his overall athletic profile. He showed out to run 4.46 at 221 pounds, 38 inches in the vert, 10 in the broad, even 18 on the bench press. That could be second running back for sure off the board. But you just go down the line here of all these names. Quinshon Judkins from Ohio State, great workout, similar to Hampton, 4.48 at 221 pounds, 38.5-inch vertical, 11 even in the broad. Those Ohio State running backs, him and Travion Henderson, should be going much sooner than later in this draft.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, Ashton Jitty didn't do anything. Didn't really need to do anything other than measure in to sustain his draft stock. There's just all types of shapes and sizes and abilities, when it comes to this class. And as we've said, we expect the Steelers to participate in drafting at least one. I'm not convinced that they'll draft one in the first, let's see, maybe 2 rounds. I mean, obviously, if you're going to draft one early, it's probably going to be one of the two. It would either be him or Marion Hampton out of North Carolina. Seems to be the consensus kind of number 2 guy in this class. But I think the Steelers will address this at some point. It's just a matter of who, and there's a lot of different potential who's within this class.
Yeah, take your pick. I'll give credit to one guy whose tape I wasn't high on, who I thought had a really good workout overall. Trevor Etienne from Georgia, the brother of Travis Etienne, former first-round pick, Jaguars running back. He ran faster than I thought. I thought he was a little more quick than fast kind of a guy, but to run 4.42, similar to his brother, is impressive. The other numbers were solid. I just thought in drills, he caught the ball well, which isn't a surprise. He showed that on tape, but just good to confirm that. Thought he had quick feet in the bag drills, just smooth overall. I still have overall concerns for a guy that's small. I do wonder, does he play to that speed? I think his Florida tape, he showed he was faster than Georgia. He's had some medical issues. He got popped for a DUI charge last year, got suspended. The DUI charge was dropped, but I think he's still on probation. So there's just a lot going on with Trevor Etienne in a deep class, but it was a really good workout at Indy for him. Taj Brooks from Texas Tech, the 4.5 240 might not pop like the others, but for his size, it plays well. He had great shuttle times, a 4.06 short shuttle, 6.9 in the three cone. He's a guy that has gotten those Le'Veon Bell comparisons. Brooks, I think, told us at the Shrine Bowl that the Steelers met with him and kind of called him a little Le'Veon Bell-like because of this patience and vision, this wait, go mentality that's really unique to have. Now, he's not going to be probably at Bell level, but he can catch, he can block. Man, there's one catch that Etienne had. I think it was against Abilene Christian. I was not even watching him. I was watching Conyers, and this catch that he made, Brooks did in the end zone, was just like receiver-like. And so that's a guy that could have really good value. Kind of gets pushed down in the depth of this running back class. I think will be an excellent third down back at the NFL level.
All right. Wide receiver group. Another the main story I think to come out of this is Matthew Golden running a 4.29 40, and a lot of people wondering, does this put him up in first round territory and potentially first wide receiver off the board over, let's say, a guy like either McMillan out of Arizona who did not run, and same with Mika Buka out of Ohio State didn't. I don't think did anything. So it feels like those three are going to be your top three wide receivers in this draft class. Golden, underclassmen, definitely going to be drafted in the first two rounds. I think the question is going into the combine is is he slam dunk first rounder, and did he leave Indianapolis a first round slam dunk?
Certainly helped his case. I believe it was Mike Tannenbaum that said he'll be the first receiver taken. I'm not sure if that is going to be the case. Ted McMillan from Arizona has been viewed as the number one receiver. I'm a little lower on him than others, but I believe he's been officially invited to the draft, which would suggest he's going to go in the first round and early in the first round. But also mentioned Luther Burden from Missouri, who thought had a good workout overall to run 4.41. He didn't jump or anything like that, but to run that time at 2:06 is good for him. I like his tape. I have not done the deep dive on him, but I've watched just a ton of Missouri tape in passing, including for his teammate Theo Weiss Jr. That's a guy that I think could be in play for Pittsburgh if they don't happen to add a veteran receiver in free agency.
All right. Let's see. Who else? Alec Ayamorno. Manor out of Stanford certainly helped himself. And I think even going into this, a lot of people had him as a top 5 wide receiver in this class.
Yeah, that's a big body that can block, that certainly has the height, weight, speed profile at almost 6'2", 206 to run 4.44, 38.5 inch in the vert, 10.7 in the broad. They talked about how he got the best Travis Hunter, I think, in that 2023 season. So you see him go up against some of the top flight competition. That's going to be useful in trying to project out at the NFL level. Other guys that had really good workouts, Dante Thornton Jr. from Tennessee, he's not gotten much buzz, but to run 4.3 flat at almost 6'5", 205 is just ridiculous. And so he's a vertical receiver that played in that up-tempo Tennessee Volunteers offense. I think teams will go back and do some more homework on him. Thought Ty Felton had a good workout. He ran faster than I thought at 4.37. He jumped really well. Little lankier guy, but he did his best work over the middle. I think he can work on special teams. He's got a gunner background, but that's a guy that certainly helped himself throughout this week. Thought one guy that didn't do that well was Pat Bryant from Illinois, who I had a lot of questions about. He's an above the rim, go ball type of a guy, but I worried about separation, long speed. He ran 4.61. He jumped well, which is not a shock. I just think he's one of those classic cases of that big receiver who lived in contested moments in college. Harder to do that at the NFL level. That's the guy whose stock probably took a hit.
We'd be remiss if we didn't talk obviously too about top wide receivers and Travis Hunter. He was listed, I think, as a DB going into the combine, and obviously he's a guy that thinks he can play both ways. I think Andrew Berry from GM of the Browns kind of had the best synopsis about him. He's a guy that 100% of the time, if you wanted to get him the ball on offense, you could do it, depending on where the ball went. Whereas on defense, he's kind of at the mercy of, does the ball come in his area from the opposing offense. He's obviously going to be, should be a first round guy, right? And it's just a matter of where teams want to fit him in. What if you draft a guy like Hunter, you've got to give him the opportunity to play both sides of the ball. Now, I know Hunter says all the right things about being a unicorn, thinks he can play every snap on both sides of the ball, but just a realistic of that and the wear and tear of the game, it just does not seem conducive to do that. But I mean, I think he is a guy that you could get on the field in dime or whatever sub-package situations. And look, I mean, if you got the pinch, you could obviously start him as well too. But should teams be looking at him primarily as a wide receiver, regardless of what he says and what position group he runs in?
It's a really interesting debate, and one we just simply basically have not had before, at least not in recent draft, hype era, to have this two-way type of guy. You got to figure out which side of the ball you want him on. Mm, I'm torn, Dave, because yes, at receiver you can get him the ball a whole lot more, but I also think if you're making him a corner, it's easier to kind of get him some receiver snaps than it would be for if he was a full-time receiver to get the occasional cornerback rep. I think it's just harder to do that, a little less natural than to get him the ball offensively. So I kind of lean towards him playing full-time corner, part-time receiver, more so than vice versa. But there really is no wrong answer here, which just kind of speaks to the unicorn talent and profile Hunter brings.
He's going to be a guy after the first 3 years too, probably looking to, depending on if he stays healthy and all, probably looking to for in other words, he ain't going to see the end of his rookie contract.
Yeah, if there's ever a franchise tag situation with him, it's going to get messy. There could be a
Right.
constitutional crisis in how you define him, but that's all stuff down the road. He'll be a top 5 pick. The question is just, will it be number 1? Will it be number 3, number 2?
Right.
He could go anywhere in there and certainly would be justified.
Right. It'd just be interested to see where he lands and how he's used.
Let's talk quarterbacks, Dave. What stuck out to you? Obviously, it was basically on-field work. Very few of these guys actually ran. A couple of them did, but no surprise there. What stuck out to you in good and bad ways?
Yeah, I thought Jackson Dart represented himself real well with what these guys were asked to do. Now it is so hard because you got quarterbacks working with wide receivers that they've never worked with before. The main thing I think you try to look for is accuracy to some degree. Velocity and all. I don't know if we've got the numbers to come out of that. I got to be honest. I paid more attention when the wide receivers and quarterbacks were working together with the wide receivers than I did the quarterbacks overall. And look, this isn't a great. Look, Jalen Milroe, small hands and all. Here's the other thing. I tell you a couple of the big takeaways that are kind of insignificant, or not coming out of the combine. That field was a mess.
Hmm.
All position groups had footing problems with this thing, and that had to drive the coaches and the evaluators crazy overall. You had guys even in like the bag drills where those guys trying to cut forward on the defensive side of football slipping. You saw even offensive linemen in the same kind of drills coming forward. Just all position groups had problems. And wasn't there something with the pellets or something like that? They
They
did
put
something.
down new sod, and it was a different kind of a pellet. Yeah.
All right, so that's first and foremost that I that was easy to pick out if you watched every set of position groups here was the field. And the second thing I think a lot of people are talking about is what's up with the measurements.
For Milrow, yeah, we know that there's often discrepancies between Senior Bowl, All-Star Game, weigh-ins, and combine ones. But Milrow is really interesting. At the Senior Bowl, his hand size was, I believe, 8 3/4. He gets to the combine, he measures in at 9 3/8, and so we're talking what, a 3/4 inch difference almost there. Is he doing those Kenny Pickett exercises, Dave? What's going on with that?
Yeah, I don't know, and I think several people have said, look, it just wasn't kind of couple of position groups. If you go across the board, there's some discrepancies for the All Star participants along at the various position groups. That's not matching up overall very well. Some offensive linemen with some feels like they got their arms sawed off since somebody just across the board they're going to have to look at that if these measurements were done right. I tell you what, if I'm Jalen Milroe and I'm coming out of this with a 9 3/8 inch hand measurement, and I get to my pro day, I'm gonna say I'm not measuring. I already measured enough. I'm tired of it, And
Yeah.
then on top of it, whatever teams bring him in for pre-draft visits or whatnot, they're probably gonna want to measure that hand themselves, and I'm gonna come up with every reason for them not to measure my hand. To be quite honest with you, I thought he threw the ball overall very well. Especially the deep ball for a guy that supposedly, has a sub 9 hand or not. I think that was one takeaway there. Tyler Shuck out of Louisville, I thought represented himself
Hmm.
well. I said Jackson Dart. I mean, it goes without nothing changed within this thing that the consensus top three, whatever order you want to put them in Shadur Sanders, Cam Ward, Jackson Dart. Nothing's changed overall for me when it comes to there. Could Jackson Dart end up being a first round guy? I mean, I suppose there's a strong possibility in that.
Yeah, not going to rule it out. He's gotten more buzz than any other quarterback throughout this pre-draft cycle, and I've been impressed by the job he's done at the Senior Bowl and at the Combine. I thought he had the best workout of any of the quarterbacks. But to your point, you don't want to toss aside an entire college career for a couple of throws at Indy. These are new receivers, new quarterbacks, not on the same page, never thrown to these guys before. And so you're going to get miscommunication. How fast is this guy? Where's he break his route off of? Even receivers having trouble understanding the drill sometimes. What is my break point? What is the depth I'm supposed to get? That can make things look worse than they are. But I thought Dart, he showed velocity. I thought Kurt Warner made a good point that sometimes you got to be able to take something off your fastball sometimes. There was, I think, some curl routes they were working on kind of to throw over a hypothetical invisible underneath hook zone defender, and Dart doesn't really get a lot of arc on his throws. That can result in tip passes in interceptions, but I thought his workout was strong. Thought the two worst workouts probably were Dylan Gabriel from Oregon. And unfortunately, regrettably, I thought my guy, Will Howard, did not have a particularly strong workout. I think he was able to warm up to things. Often his first throw on a new route would be off, and the second one would be a lot better. So that he kind of was settling into his throw some. Just not a lot of chances to kind of get into a rhythm because they rotate these guys after one or two throws. But it wasn't a particularly good workout for Will Howard. I thought Dart and Chuck were probably among the best guys at Indy. But again, it should not change your whole opinion on a quarterback based on some throws in this new environment.
Yeah, the tape's the tape on these guys, especially in such an important position as the quarterback position. I mean, the tape is the tape overall there. I thought, though, kudos to Shooter Sanders for coming out on Twitter and saying, why you booing Will Howard? The guy's got a natty and all like that. So that will sit well with several franchises for Shadur Sanders coming out, sticking up for another guy like that. Kind of insignificant maybe in the grand scheme of things, but that was impressive for him to go on Twitter and defend another quarterback like that. I like that. The quarter. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I just like for all position groups, the whole maturity of everybody, I thought was really impressive. Guys that rooted for each other. There was not a lot of selfishness going on there. Quarterbacks, other position groups. It just seemed like it's an older class probably, which may help a little bit, but just a lot of maturity in the group.
All right. Overall, top to bottom, though, not a very impressive quarterback class, and we've known that for quite a while here. All right, offensive linemen. The big thing that I kind of wondered going into this position group was how many of these tackles are going to have to play guard, and I think that remains kind of my takeaway overall here. And the bad thing about it is and we expected this, not a lot of these guys did the 20-yard shuttle or three cone. Be interesting to see how many of these guys go under that. What's that magic number? 445 or something?
447, the Josh Norris short shuttle number.
Right, and nobody cracked that, I don't think, of the kids. You had Caleb Rogers out of Texas Tech that hit a 449. So there was all the talk about the LSU tackle Will Campbell and the arm size of 32 and 5/8, and is that going to be good enough? And look, you could have, who was the other guy, Schlater a few years ago,
I think he was 33. Was Slater right at 33? I'll check.
I can't remember, but here's the thing with Will Campbell, man. There's enough talent. I don't know if you saw the interview that he gave with was it Stacey Dills or the other?
A couple of them. I listened to both. Yeah,
they were great.
Oh yeah,
they were great. I mean, and he is every bit Louisiana
Southern farm boy.
Yeah. I mean, he is. How do you not like that guy just off the interviews alone? And look, this guy's got enough talent. We'll be interested to see. He's going to move great on his 20-yard shuttle and all like that. Things of that nature. Regardless of where you think this guy is going to play with you, you don't You figure it out after you draft him. I think you give him every opportunity to play tackle at the NFL level, and if you can't, you just kick him inside there. So I know there's a lot of talk about the arm length on with him, but I mean the tape. I've looked at that tape on him. It's great overall. It's just a matter of where you think he can fit, where he can play at the NFL level. He's going to be a first round guy.
He's a meat and potatoes, yes ma'am, no sir kind of a guy. He's going to have, I think, a really good NFL career, whether that's a tackle or guard. I'm with you. Give him the chance to tackle first before we start moving this guy around. Let him prove himself at tackle, given his great career against top flight competition versus LSU. Just, Alan Faneca like, just LSU kid, first rounder, no nonsense type of a dude. So obviously not going to be in play for Pittsburgh. You just hope he doesn't go to a competitor in in a Cleveland or something like that. That's kind of what you root against, because that guy could be a headache for the next decade.
I've got a lot of TV tape on Carson Vinson out of Alabama A&M that I want to look at. Do you know anything about him?
Not particularly. It's somebody that we're going to profile when we kind of do our Steelers Depot small school week for the site. Profile a bunch of guys that aren't, at the FBS level. He's one of the HBCU guys from Alabama A&M. He's big, he's long, had a good workout, really considered one of the top small schoolers, top HBCU candidate. So that's a guy that I want to dig into. I think he's a pretty violent, powerful type of a guy in all the best possible ways, but somebody that's going to be on our radar when we kind of do that small school week.
That Ursary out of Minnesota is another one that I want to dive into. That I think he had a good combine.
Yeah, I thought he worked out well, went through the drills, looked good. I thought, what did you think about Donovan Jackson from Ohio State? Not that he's going to be in play for Pittsburgh, but he was gutting out. Like it was a right leg injury. They wrapped up his leg, and you appreciate a guy that played through the pain and didn't bow out when it would have been easy to kind of sit on the sidelines. But you also don't hurt yourself in a severe way. Dante Jackson, how do you kind of interpret his workout gutting through an obvious injury?
Oh, look, I mean, I didn't want it to Colt. Who was the GM that was over there talking to him? Was it the Colts?
I think it was Ballard, Chris Ballard. Yeah.
Right. They're almost like, guy, don't hurt yourself over here. Now,
I kind of love it. I kind of love the line.
Oh yeah, look, I mean, I have nothing wrong with and we mentioned the tight end working through the ankle and all like that. Yeah, I mean, it shows these guys want to compete. And there was another general manager. Who was it? Our head coach. Maybe it was even the Colts. Head coach they talked to, and they like these guys to get out there and compete. Even these top guys, that feel like they don't have to compete. They like to see them get out there and compete just for the sake of competing.
Yeah, if you're the best, go show that you're the best. And so I appreciate it. And I think for a lineman, like if you make a list of top traits, because I think what a good evaluators do, teams that know themselves is, okay, they have a list of each position. What are the top things we're looking for traits wise in each player, each position group, to determine who we're going to draft. I think for a lineman, going to be tough, going to be a tough guy. And Donovan Jackson showed his toughness on the field.
With Jackson overall 6'3", 5'8", 33.5-inch arms, you do wonder if he's going to have to kick inside. I think that's been the talk about him.
Yeah, I don't know where I come in on that. I've not really studied him, but I was impressed by him gutting that one out. And hopefully he's okay. Didn't severely hurt himself. He knows his body, but I just give him kudos for that. One guy that didn't run, and a lot of the guys I was like wanting to see how they would test just because I thought they would crush it. Didn't work out, didn't do all the stuff. Jalen Royals ran fast, but didn't jump. I think he'll jump great. One guy that didn't run that I thought would have run really well was Marcus Bowe from Purdue. And I apologize. Like I said in the past, I've said his last name was Mbao. It's apparently Bowe with a silent M on the front of it, but he looked really good in drills. He's fluid, former basketball star. He's got basketball feet. Again, we're talking not somebody really in Pittsburgh's consideration, maybe late round 1, top 50 type of a guy for Bowe, but I think he'll be a great guard. Another guy that played right tackle this year, played guard a couple years ago. I think we'll kick back inside at the NFL level.
Pull up your what they looked for from last year on the tackles and the 20-yard shuttle?
Sure. Give me 1 second, and I will do that again.
Unfortunately, while you do that, once again, unfortunately, and to be expected, unfortunately, in this day and age, the way they have the schedule set up for these guys, it sure would be nice to to see more of these guys. Because look, we'll track all these guys through the pro days and all like that. But it's nice to have this one big giant spreadsheet from the combine with as many completed full processes as possible there. But unfortunately, and I think you're going to see this more and more, you're going to have things like the 20-yard shuttle and the 3-cone kind of, because the 60-yard shuttle's already fallen off completely off the board at this point.
L drill.
Right. When it comes to that, but do you have it pulled up there on the 20-yard shuttle on the tackles?
I do. It was 4.95 seconds or better. Now, Fautanu's not included in that because I have not rerun the study for 2025, but I just checked. He did not do the shuttle at all last year, not at the combine, not at his pro day, to your point about guys not doing all the testing. So that's not going to change. Basically, the takeaway is the athletic profile. Pittsburgh does not have a high bar for that. So I imagine all these guys are fitting under that because Pittsburgh does not have a super high threshold for the athletic testing part for their offensive tackles.
All right. And what about the 3-cone with those tackle groups?
815 or better.
Wow. So not huge. Now the guard's a little bit different, right?
I can check that. For tackle, it was kind of more of a size profile that they'd look for. There's not a lot of huge takeaways in terms of thresholds when it comes to tackles from what I can tell for Pittsburgh. I'm having a little bit of trouble finding the interior offensive lineman, so I may have to get back to you on that one.
What was the arm on the tackles?
Let me pull that back up for you. It might have been 32 and a half. Let me see. I scroll down and find the criteria. 33 and a half. Now, again, that was before Fautanu, but he's got 34-inch arms, so he came in above threshold.
Okay. All right.
Give me a second. We might circle back to the interior lineman because I got to try to find where that article is at. Any other offensive linemen stick out to you, Dave, in good or bad ways?
I mean, several that I didn't know a lot about, just learning some, precursory, stuff about them that I want to dive deeper in. Like I said, even though he's a smaller school kid, Carson Vincent, I thought he had a good combine overall. I want to go look at some of his, because I don't think you're going to find a lot of probably all 22 tape on him. But I found out that in YouTube TV, I've got like 6 games. One against Auburn, I started to look at late last night on him, and I think he played. I thought there was another top team that he played against as well too. That I've got that game recorded.
I thought he didn't work out. I don't know if you did the positional drills, but Holland Pierce and Rutgers, just one of the largest human beings that you're gonna see. He weighed in at. What did he weigh in at? 6'083", 341 with 36-inch arms and 88.25-inch wingspan. I was watching tape Antoine Powell-Ryland from Virginia Tech last night in a game against Rutgers, and Pierce is impossibly huge.
How many games I've got? Oh boy, I got a lot of Rutgers games
over here. Yeah, go watch that big left tackle. Just he's easy to find. He's the big guy.
Which game stuck out?
Well, I wasn't watching Pierce in particular. I was watching Powell-Ryland. I just was watching him against Rutgers, and I just was watching get a look at Pierce on field, dwarfing everybody else.
All right, I've got a lot of TV tape on Rutgers. So.
Yeah, we got a report on Pierce up on the site. We're up to over 150, so we're motoring along. For the interior lineman, I don't think I've done a study the last couple of years. I'll do one for 2025. This is from 2022, so it's maybe a little outdated, but I had a 4.95 short shuttle and 7.8 3-cone.
Okay. All right.
So again, not a lot of huge athletic requirements for the interior lineman. We'll see if Pittsburgh addresses guard with James Daniels, almost certain to be playing elsewhere in depth, a little thin along the interior for the Steelers.
All right. Got about a little less, I guess, than 6 weeks until the draft, and I've got a lot of tape still to watch.
Yeah, so I want to thank our combine guys, Jonathan Heitritter, Joe Clark, Ross McCorkle for their work this past week. It's a busy week for sure. Everything from talking with Omar Khan to, of course, speaking with prospects. We know, I think 30 formal interviews of the 45 Pittsburgh's allotted, and I believe around 40 informal interviews the team conducted. So we have a pretty good understanding of the position groups they met with and the names they were leaning on, not to make too much out of any one thing, but it's all pieces of the puzzle. And I'm going to try to go down this rabbit hole, Dave. Maybe you can assist. We saw two Steelers coaches doing on-field drills this weekend, correct? We saw Carl Dunbar putting the defensive linemen through the paces, and Eddie Faulkner, the running backs coach, working some of the drills as well. Somebody had said there's a correlation between when Pittsburgh has an on-field coach working guys out and who they draft. I know Dunbar's, I think, does it basically every year, so I don't know what the correlation is there, but that seems reasonable and logical and plausible. So I kind of want to try to dig into that and try to find out the correlation between on-field Steelers coaches and who they end up drafting.
Well, how many, let's see, they drafted what? Logan Lee last year. They drafted Keanu Benton the year before that. Liao, right?
Yeah, they're drafting defense linemen, I guess, basically every year. But I especially early selections is probably what I would focus it at because late draft, you don't have to, areas where they expect to draft early. Because didn't they have a Zani? No.
Zani was there on the field, I think I spotted with the wide receiver, but not doing drills.
Yeah, but he was on the field.
Right.
Last year.
Did you see Isaac out there?
I did not this year. He's been out there the last couple of years getting tossed around. Maybe got tired of getting ragdolled around. He said somebody else can go do it.
Yeah. I don't know. It would be interesting to see. And then obviously they've got that drill that Terrell Austin.
Well, it's named after him. Yeah, he doesn't conduct it anymore. So it might be harder to do to try to find some of that combine footage. But interesting thought, and just at least worth pointing out that Dunbar, Faulkner, are very visible presences of the coaching staff, which also, of course, confirms they will be on staff in 2025.
All right. Pro Day's up next and playing Where's Waldo season.
Yeah, and I think they start this week too. Like I said, I think Purdue's I think it's why Bo didn't work out because he's got his pro day in like 2 days. And so that's probably why he didn't do
Georgia comes up quick, and I think Clemson comes up quick on this. So we'll be busy with that, talking more about these as we watch more tape.
Would expect Tomlin, Khan to be at both those Georgia Clemson pro days, assuming there is no scheduling conflict.
All right,
Dave, anything else? Any late breaking news? Let us know. If not, we can get to some reader emails and close out today's show.
All right, let's see what we got in the old email machine here today. Todd Gensler on the combine with more and more athletes failing to participate at the combine. What do you foresee as changes in the structure over the next decade? I know interviews and medical are still very. Oh, what'd you think about the new next gen stats that on the combine tracking that the NFL did?
Yeah, really cool. I'm all for more information on these types of things. So the more that you can highlight things that aren't just 40 times, I think is pretty interesting.
He says, what do you see as foresee as changes in the structure over the next decade? He says, I know interviews and medical are still very important as well. Most of the NFL is there. I did not know if you thought anything would change. Also, what percentage of the athletes actually change their draft stock following the results of the combine? Most of the drills do not translate directly to football. This goes into back to the old thing is this guy's flying up the board at the combine and all like that. Here's all been my thoughts about the combine related to all that kind of stuff. Well before this year and all like that. These teams, I mean, this is a $1 billion business. These teams have scouting departments that know everything, a lot about these guys before they even show up at Indy. Does a guy go screaming up the draft board based on what he did at Indy? I will say this, Mike Mayock always said, fast guys run fast, slow guys run slow. And if you see the discrepancies of what, especially with these scouting departments, hey, I didn't expect that guy. And luckily with more all 22 tape being out there now, us YouTube scouts and us bloggers and all like that have a lot more info about these guys heading into combines than we ever had before. And there is occasions where you say, oh, I didn't know, I didn't realize that guy was going to be that quick and all like that. Other than stuff that we don't see, like the interviews and the medical and all like that, how much is it of these guys, quote unquote, flying up their draft stock. I think the guy out of Texas, Godwin, is a guy that people are buzzing about, and the safety and all like that. How much does this actually change, though?
I mean, it's hard to quantify. Obviously, there's no time machine in which we can live in a world where a guy has a great workout and one where he doesn't, and judge his draft stock off of. Certainly, things like flying up draft boards, those are more media terms, and the media is always playing catch up to the NFL. There's no question about that. I do think there's still value in combine testing to get guys on a level playing field, to get the analytical testing about things like RAS and other, athletic measures, the 4.47 short shuttle we talk about, the predictors that actually have some pretty good correlation between if a guy tests this way, his chances of NFL success are X. Nothing's guaranteed. There's always outliers in either direction, but there is real analytical value in that for an NFL that's become more and more analytical over time. And I do wonder, while scouts are not going to be surprised, they know these guys, inside and out, chapter and verse, does an owner come in and say, "Hey, this guy ran really fast. Let's look at this guy some more." Does a Jerry Jones get enticed by that workout warrior, or maybe some coach that's diving into draft later than scouts, perk up his ears because the guy has a really good workout and wants to find out more about him? So I do wonder if there's a little more reaction in from an ownership coach standpoint. I'm sure the scouts are really not surprised by most of what happens.
And look, with the extended season now, some of these guys have less time to train for this. Some guys have more time to train for this. Some guys drop weight, to make sure they test overly well. So look, I mean, the tape's the tape. Your scouting department is your scouting department. A lot of your work's already done, where you're just hoping, to me, see things that you saw. And look, these guys are, we're me personally, I'm not fully caught up on these guys until right after the combine, as far as who they are, you know.
Mhm.
And I'm impressed with myself that I learned so much about this class from the time the Senior Bowl gets underway until the combine ends. Just for the sheer fact that I'm behind the eight ball on this, because yeah, I'll watch college football during the season, but I don't intimately know a lot about a lot of players due to us having to cover the Steelers and the schedule that we keep here. But when it relates to NFL personnel, it's their organization's job to know a lot about these guys before they even show up at Indy. So as far as the future and the structure of this thing, who knows? I mean, if I had my druthers, everybody would run everything, but it's just not going to happen. And we did have a lot of DNPs in this thing, and I just for my own being able on a level playing field, I wish we had all these sheets filled all the way in. But that's a perfect world, and you know. Are we going to see things like the 20-yard shuttle and the 60-yard, and the three cone kind of fall more and more to the wayside?
Yeah, I'm sure it's going to keep trending in where guys will do less and less unless there's some sort of rule change that compels and forces these guys to work out, which I don't think is going to happen. That this trend will continue with college football playoffs, as you said, the season extending later. A lot of guys wanting to just wait, and with the pro days being right after Tucson, hoping. I think pro day should be pushed back to try to give some sort of gap between combine and pro day. I think it's way too bunched together. Maybe we can kick the draft back a little bit. Those would all be options I think I would do to even expand the NFL calendar even more. My two very minor other takeaways from the combine, and it doesn't mean much, but they're just observations. A lot of players came in taller than listed. Usually guys are listed 6'5" and they're really 6'3". There were a lot of guys that came in 6'4" and were 6'5", which typically doesn't happen. And I would also just say the precision now on these 40 times is really interesting because they're basically on the money. It used to be that a 40 time would come in and be like the hand time, 10, 15 years ago, and you kind of have to wait and see what the official time is. Are they slower? Are they faster by, almost a tenth of a second? And now I don't think any official 40 time moved more than 1/1000th of a second up. I don't think anyone was slower on their official 40 time than the unofficial time. And so the precision that we basically know the 40 times out of the box, it's not kind of that mystery of, okay, that's the unofficial. What would be the official 40 time? How much of a change will there be? That's basically gone away.
Now, as we mentioned, there are still drills that are well worth their, value. A lot of in there. We talked about the DBs and the backpedaling and how they turn and all like that. The gauntlet drill is very fun to watch. Who can keep the straightest line at the highest speed and catch all the footballs, and maintain a good speed in doing so. That's fun to watch. I mean, so these drills have meaning, or else they wouldn't do them. I mean, scouts want to see them go through certain drills as laid out, because they get some value to that. So the combine still has value, obviously, at its whole.
Yeah, and especially again, it's the even playing field nature. If I can watch a guy go through his back pedal and compare him one to one with somebody else in the same environment in the same moment, so it's a really good way to stack up prospects. And I think the testing still has value because I want to build out an athletic profile of who you are as an athlete. The 40 time alone may not tell you that you're a great football player. It certainly doesn't, but you combine that with other testing as a data point that can have a lot of value. You and I love RAS. It's a
Right.
really important figure, and it's really taken off. And it's awesome to see that guy Kentley Platt go from kind of just doing it as a pet project to now being retweeted by Adam Schefter. I think that's really, really cool of how that's gotten embraced, and it's got a ton of value. So even the testing, even the 40-yard dash and the vertical, where the guy's never going to be jumping from a standing still position up in the air. It's not a football thing, but it's an athletic thing, which becomes part of your profile.
I think Daniel Jeremiah and Rich Eisen do a great job as a whole, but I could do without the David Spade interviews. I could do without a lot of the time filling stuff. If they're going to do interviews, I want to hear GMs, I want to hear coaches, even though they're not going to give you everything that you want. And I want to learn as much about
Yeah.
these guys as I possibly can, just from the narration from guys like Daniel Jeremiah and Charles Davis and all. And there were times throughout this thing that I found myself kind of, oh, come on, get on with it. Talk more about the player, or what's happening, in these drills. I mean, it's hard to narrate a 40-yard time, obviously, but you can talk a lot about in between the guy actually running his time. I s- they could do a better job of less trying to be entertaining, I guess, to the masses, and talk more about the players.
Yeah, they need to know their audience a bit better. The guys that are watching the combine are people like you and I that are obsessed with that late round gem. And so lean into that. You don't have to appeal to the general public because they're not watching this event in any meaningful way anyway. Talk about the players. This is their weekend. This is their
Right.
time. The focus should be on them, not on, David Spade telling the story about him growing up playing high school football or whatever. No one cares about that. Put the focus on the main thing, which are the players.
Yeah, I want Daniel Jeremiah to tell me why, or why not, or what tape to go look at this guy, and show those kind of, cut ups and those kind of things. That I watch this thing all the way through to try to learn as much about as many players as I possibly can.
Yeah, no, I do think Stacey Dales does a great job highlighting some of the
Fantastic.
personal stories and some really cool. Like those things are important because again, I made the point. You're drafting people. You're not drafting a position. You're not drafting an athlete. You're drafting a person, and so it's good to know the human side of things as well. But yeah, all that ancillary kind of fun stuff with celebrity guests, I can do without.
All right, Matthew Suddeth, one more from him. Thanks for the in-depth coverage of the combine and overall draft process. I gained so much knowledge about future Steelers prospects from your conversations. If the Steelers were to anoint you as a representative to make their first-round selection at number 21, and by some miracle the following players are available, whose card are you taking to the podium and why? I'm not there yet, but we'll read off these names real quick. Mika Agbuka, wide receiver, Kenneth Grant, Derek Harmon, Walter Nolan, Will Johnson, Ashton Genty. Look, you could build a worse group of, say, 6 names that could potentially be the first round draft pick. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, I imagine many of those names will be on the list when we come to late April, Dave, and talking about who they're actually going to take. So, yeah, I'm not at a point where I'm going to sit there and say this is the guy. Of course, you guys know I've been high on Derek Harmon, and so that's kind of my first instinct. So I'll stick with Harmon for now, but there's a lot of good options there.
Yeah, look, it's going to be interesting discussion, obviously, when it comes to Agbuka, especially because we'll see what this team does with the wide receiver room. Running back Ashton Genty, a lot of people think he might be off the board. If he's not, that obviously I would imagine would create some conversations in the draft room. Walter Nolan, you and I have talked a little bit more about him throughout this process, even as short as it's been so far. I would definitely have Grant and Harmon ranked above Nolan. I come out of the combine really wondering if Derek Harmon might be the guy. Uh, and if not him, potentially Kenneth Grant. It feels like this team really wants to address the trenches, defensive line specifically, and it's going to be hard to, whichever way I end up predicting that I think the first round draft pick will go, it'll be hard at this point to get me off of a defensive lineman, probably one of Derek Harmon and Kenneth Grant the further we get into this thing.
Yeah, that's fair. We'll see how free agency impacts things. Obviously, they need a receiver, and if hypothetically they didn't add a clear starting receiver over the next couple of weeks, then that's going to be right in the conversation in the first round with Matthew Golden and Luther Burden and Ibuka and whoever else you want to throw in there. But I'm kind of assuming they're going to do something at receiver and go into the draft looking at running back and D line as probably among the top two positional needs.
Yeah, Matt, that's, I mean, obviously not a bad list. And I even asked on my Twitter feed, over the weekend, what, best guess at five players that could potentially be the Steelers pick at 21 overall if the draft were happened today. And, got a lot of similar answers within there. I think Harmon was in a bunch of them. Nolan was in a bunch of them. Genty, Ibuka, Kenneth Grant, obviously. So, it feels like, you got a good selection of probably, if we're being realistic, 7, 8, 9 names in totality that could legitimately be that pick at 21 overall.
Yeah, and pro days will provide us a lot more information where they're sending positional scouts, of course, where Tomlin, Congo,
Well, they go
etc.
to Oregon. Well, they go to Oregon to see Harmon.
Sure.
They normally, they typically, don't go that far out west, will they, this year? There's a lot of great prospects at Oregon that make it worth your while to go see more than just a guy
Yeah.
like Derek Harmon out there this year.
Last year they didn't send Tomlin or Khan to Washington. They sent Pat Meyer, then they brought Fautanu in for a visit. So do they do the whole bring Harmon in for
Right.
a visit? Wouldn't be surprising if that's kind of the way they go about it. Remember that broke our streak of Tomlin, Khan having guys at that pro day for first round picks, but could be the guy coming in for a visit instead for the Big Ten. Just so weird to say for Oregon, but Big Ten Oregon Ducks.
Right. Do we know when that pro day is? When's the Oregon pro day?
There was a list of some pro days that were tweeted out the other day. I'll check to see if Oregon was on that list or not. Give me
Looks
one
like
second.
Oregon's March 18th, right?
Let's see. Yes, March 18th. That's the same day as the Big 12 pro day. I hate the Big 12's doing that stupid collective pro day, which I think had really bad turnout last year. But yeah, what other pro days are that day? Northwestern, South Carolina's got a couple of prospects, and Wofford. So we'll see.
All right.
The Alabama pro day is the next day. I mean, obviously they can fly in, but
Right.
I mean, Tomlin is going to be in Alabama for sure. So we'll see how that works logistically.
Yeah, going to be at Michigan on March 21st, I would imagine. Will Tomlin go to any of these quarterback pro days?
Yeah, that's a great
The
point
Ole
as
Miss
well.
one, maybe.
I mean, he'll be there for Bama just because he's always at Alabama, so he'll be there to see Milrow. He'll be there probably at Ohio State because they're often at Ohio State.
Are there any
Howard.
big schools along with? Well, you mentioned the Big 12 pro day going on that same weekend there, but what day? Yeah, because the Alabama's the next day. There'd be interesting to see if they go out to Oregon or not.
I'm gonna guess they're not, and they're gonna bring guys in for a visit like Harmon if they want to talk to them more in depth.
All right, got through some emails there. We're about an hour, 2 hours long in this. Anything else you'd like to hit on?
No live stream tonight. Part of our normal schedule. We'll be back for next weekend, which will be, I'm sure, very, very busy with the tampering period officially kicking off. I'm sure we'll hear a lot more rumors and buzz, and at some point, we'll get a quarterback in Pittsburgh.
All right, tease that article you got up on the site today.
Oh yeah, didn't no time to do that for today to get into it, not line by line, but I have my Steelers free agent predictions, my predictions of which pending Steelers free agents internally will leave, will go, have the whole list there, and working on my wish list, which will drop later this week for external free agents.
All right, and I've got a lot of wide receiver tape to watch today, so that's what I'm going to be doing today. All right, until Wednesday, you can follow me on Twitter /X at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and want to donate, SteelersDepot.com. Hit the donate button. Also, if you like an ad-free version of the site, SteelersDepot.com. Hit the ad-free button. Follow the directions that way. So until Wednesday, get those questions in post combine. We'll try to read off a bunch of them on
just.
Uh-oh.
This isn't. I'm overselling it, but Mike Hilton just tweeted out 4 minutes ago. New opportunities always present themselves with a praying hands emoji. Could Hilton be out of Cincinnati and maybe making his way to Pittsburgh?
Interesting. Okay. All right. Until Wednesday, as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.